Okay, welcome to June 2012 in a Victory Garden. This is going to be the last slideshow for 2012 from pictures that I've taken. I'm going to try to set one up for July if I can get my photo editing program to comply with with the JPEGs. So let's get started here on the 5th of July. I just noticed something really interesting in this picture. I hope you can pick it out on your screen. If not, then you'll probably have to head out to the PRI forums, and this is permaculturenews.org. They've changed it from permaculture.org.au, and you go to permaculturenews.com, go to the forums, member systems, and you can find larger pictures from some of these slideshows in there along with the links. But anyway, this is just a butterfly that I noticed flying around the garden, and then he was staying really still in the shade on the mulch. And what I just noticed in this picture, if you look at the bottom of the tail of this butterfly, there's actually a spider running around on his wings. There's a spider there. He's brown, and you should be able to pick him out because there's no symmetry of the same thing. That's kind of funny. I've never seen a spider on the back of a butterfly wing. Maybe they hitch rides. Maybe he's no, probably not, but that'd be funny. He's like a butterfly airliner. Here's another picture of him. And the withering plant to the right of him is that wonderful plant that we all know and love, poison ivy, that I had been attacking with urine, just pouring urine on it all the time. If I needed, this sounds gross, but urine, urine will burn plants. There's so much nitrogen in it. So I would just keep burning off its leaves. I had tried to sheet mulch around it, but apparently this one did come up because it's growing on the other side of the fence. Anyway, that's what that is. Next picture. We should get right at 30 minutes because I don't have too many pictures from this section. And here's some of these irises that were gifted to us, and we planted them at different depths and on the margins of both of our ponds. And this is right at the mouth of the little bog that goes between both ponds. So what we're hoping is that with the addition of the marginals, and as we increase the number of aquatic plants, they're going to be able to filter this water for us that is either moving into the slope, down the slope into the garden, or falling into the pond itself. But we need to have roots that are going to hold on to the clay particles and actually put an organic layer there between the water and the clay, so we'll get some pure water without having to filter it using anything besides plants. That's the idea. It should work. It's worked elsewhere. But clay, of course, is very fine particulate, so it's going to take a really good set of plants in order to clean it up. Here's an image looking on the far left of this picture. You can see the water hyacinth that grows in our upper pond. And then, of course, down right from there, you're looking at a mass of horsetails, and that's the bog area that goes, that's the other end of the bog area. And then the old Four Sisters Guild having a lot of lettuce seeding, cilantro seeding, cosmos flowering. There are so many plants growing in there. It's just spectacular. And there's black-eyed Susans, asparagus that we were gifted. Here's some of the cosmos that is growing on our property now, that showing some variation from what we got in the packet. Here it is again with a better picture of it. And black-eyed Susans, I don't know if they're annuals or perennials because I did just respond to an ad from Craigslist. Even if they are annuals, they're a hardy self-sowing annual, so we don't really have to worry about them once they're established, and they're obviously established. They're growing very well in our garden. This is the old Nightshade Guild looking up into there. A lot of these photos aren't in focus. Nothing is in focus in some of these. I'm not really sure what happened that day. Maybe I don't really know. Maybe there was some condensation or something. I have no clue as to why so many of these pictures are out of focus, but you can still see the level of diversity. Here's the asparagus, dead center. It's that really spindly thing, and then next to it is a tomato plant that was gifted to us. We had a lot of plants given to us by a new friend. He was very generous and gave us tomatoes and strawberries and irises and all sorts of plants from his native garden that he has in the front of his house, actually. So people, when they drive by, they can see this wonderful, you know, wildflower meadow that he's got growing there. It's just wonderful, and it's all organic. So we're happy to take plants when he's ready to offer them. Here, that was the 5th of June. Now we're at the 13th. Now this has got a lot of pictures that aren't in focus, but a wide angle shot of the garden. You can see the sunflowers on the left. Those are the ones that get more sun and more water because they're on the contour, whereas the ones on the right get much less. It was just a very interesting experiment, to say the least. And not sure if we would do the exact same thing again. Probably start peas earlier, grow beans, who knows. We'll try all sorts of things on this fence to try to make use of that vertical space. And the plum with a lot of grass growing up around it, but we're just trying our best to put in new plants around it that will hopefully outcompete the grass over time. And the grass still is sort of easy to pull up at this point because it's just creeping into the mulch. And I'm really surprised people don't recommend mulch as a lawn care if you've got crabgrass, because after a few weeks, if it comes up through your mulch, it's going to grow better than ever. We've got Asiatic lilies that were on sale where I worked, and brought them home, transplanted them out. Some of them are out here, some of them are actually in the garden itself, so we know that they'll do well. There's chia growing, there's all sorts of things in here that we just threw out seed for. Close up of one of those mammoth sunflowers, one of the healthiest ones that we had. Some of these grew about 9 feet tall. We've got a rose bush that I transplanted out into the garden, a new bed that I double dug for it and amended with compost and everything. This was a gift for my mother. And there's strawberries that are going to act as a ground cover around it while it's getting its feet. So once it gets too big and the strawberries are getting shaded, we can just transplant the strawberries elsewhere. There's the rose again. And next to the rose, into the beds with chopped and dropped clover and alfalfa, because there was some red clover and alfalfa even in the old Four Sisters Guild, which is where this is, and we've got peppers growing and strawberries. Everything is tucked in with a nice, good layer of freshly cut mulch that's now beginning to rot. Here's great blue lobelias in the center, and then on the left you've got new comfrey plants that I had transplanted. There's a great blue lobelia up close. Looking down on it, you can see at the top some more of the comfrey. This is where the water really backs up on this swale. So that's that big patch of comfrey that we're growing in order to stabilize the slope and make use of all the water that infiltrates right there. A little bit larger picture of the flower spike. And this is the other end of the swale, of the second swale. And center left, you can see a comfrey plant. Bottom left, you can see a comfrey plant. So if you divide the screen along that diagonal axis, on the left side of it is the old Four Sisters, and on the right side is the old nightshade area. And you've got some brassicas still growing in here. The yarrow is doing very well in this location. It gets a lot of sun, a lot of water because it's right there on the swale. Very thick growth in this area. Bee balm acting as generalist nectary, with a companion of yarrow acting as a specialist nectary. And again, remember, a lot of these legumes look so similar. That's how you can tell that they're probably a nitrogen-fixing plant, because they just look like this. So this could either be a black locust, or it could be more the Amorpha fruticosa. It could be one of the two. Those we're going to get transplanted out later in the day. This is the very south end of the garden in the green guild, with dill that came up by itself and flowered. We don't really take too much care in this. We just keep the pathways open and make sure we have this very strange parasitic kind of fungus or something. It may be a parasitic plant, and it's got these orange tendrils, and that's really the only thing that we have to watch out for. It came, and it tries to eat all of our clover. I had some pictures of it in an earlier slideshow. There's a lot of growth in there, new comfrey plants. Seen a lot of this angle, a lot of light right now. This is June, so this is midsummer pretty much, and the garden is lopping it all up, staying very moist underneath all the living ground covers or the chopped and dropped mulch. Everything is going to seed and it's flowering. We're introducing strawberries throughout the gardens. We had so many of the plants gifted to us, and just going to experiment to see where they want to grow the best. I like this picture. And you can see that some of our brassicas that we had left standing are going for a second round of seed production. It blew my mind when I first noticed that they were coming back around for another go. That's just incredible. I didn't know they could do that, or they would. I mean, look at this. Some of these other ones are completely been ripped open, and the finches have already gotten to them, and the plant is going around and is going to make it a second step for us. That's incredible. Looking down north along the fence line, and looking south one more time. The Echinacea offering up a lot of nectar. Echinacea is just, you really should grow Echinacea if you can. It's one of the best medicinal plants. It's absolutely beautiful, very, very hardy. Doesn't need to be watered or anything once it gets established. So we look forward to spreading it throughout the garden. Just a wonderful species to have. Zoomed out a little bit more. Those are 2-year-old plants. This is underneath the willow. We've seen pictures of this just earlier. You can see those comfrey plants a little bit easier now in the center. And there's the great blue lobelias, dead center. And we've got white clover around the base of the willow tree. And some of these other really tall, kind of weedy looking plants, I did end up cutting them back just because they weren't looking too good. They were having some powdery mildew problems, so I just said, oh, okay, I'll just chop and drop them, throw them in the swale, and feed our comfrey. And so sometimes we don't let things just grow. It's really a matter of if you think you need more, mulch someplace, or if something looks like it's going to get kind of invasive or too aggressive, you can chop it back. We're not just growing literally everything, although we do let everything have a lot more time in the sun than most people would. This photo is of an addition that I did along that old overflow ditch. I filled it with mulch. And that didn't seem to work too well. Even though it's been cut off from the swale, it still gets a lot of water running down in there. And we want the water to stay up high as long as possible. So I dug holes into the ground. And then I filled them with completely saturated mulch. And about 20 to 30 gallons a piece, each of these holes are. They're about 20 to 30 gallons of mulch that went into these. And I only had time because I thought about it right before I was, going to leave the country. And so there's only, I think, maybe 4 or 5 of them. But that's still, if there's 4 of them, that's 80 gallons. If there's 5 of them, that's 100. It's about 100 gallons of water, which is a lot of water. Isn't that into like 4 liters in a gallon or something? But anyway, they can't be 4 liters in a gallon. I should know that. I live in a metric country now. That's kind of sad. But anyway, this is a really good way, at least I'm hoping it's a really good way to slow the water down so that it's no longer going to be a destructive factor. We can always dig more of these all along the fence line and fill them with mulch and keep them filled with mulch so people don't trip over and break a leg or something. You can walk on these, and they're going to soak up all the water that comes in from the neighbor's property now. And I can assure you that there's a lot of fungal activity going on, that the plants that are adjacent to these mulch pits are going to take off. Like if we planted tomatoes back in here again one more time, you would never have to irrigate them, I would think. Almost any water demanding plant, they're going to love this. Okay, next shot, nothing is in focus here, but right along this fence line, we could just be digging more holes and filling them with mulch as a way to absorb water from our neighbor. Chop and drop in the Old Four Sisters. And if we look closely, look at all of these seeds coming up from radishes and from cabbages and mustard, arugula. They're all sprouting. It's ridiculous. This is the middle of summer. They shouldn't be doing this, but you can see how thickly the clover has been laid down, and there's a layer of wood mulch as well that still hasn't broken down. So the soil stays cool enough, apparently, that these are ready to sprout. Looking across the big pond out onto that area we sheet mulched and put in squash and sunflowers and all this, you can see just how much growth you can have in a short period of time. Quite astounding. Here's the irises again that are at that entrance or the exit of the bog. This is one that's just on the sunniest side possible. Hopefully that will spread. Here's this polyculture, part of the polyculture that we have growing in this. The grass is coming up through the sheet mulch, even though we sheet mulched it with really thick, good cardboard from appliances, which are, when you cut them open and you lay them flat, they can be over 2 meters across. They're huge, and there are no seams, but Bermuda grass, crabgrass, whatever kind of grass this is, it's just so aggressive that it comes in. We'd have to put a rhizome barrier, and even without the rhizome barrier, some of it's coming up through the mulch. It wasn't put out of its misery. We've got squash, okra, lupins, tomatoes, echinacea. There's one of this false indigo. There's actually some of the real Baptisia indigos in here. So this is going to be a really thriving place in the garden. Oregano being visited by all sorts of insects. And lots of lettuce going to seed here as well. You can see just how tall some of these birches have gotten. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, that's one of the river birch seedlings that was, less than half that height earlier this year. It's got really good form, looks really healthy. We're going to chop those back eventually once they get a little bit too big, maybe next year or something, and then that's going to add a lot of organic matter into the deep soil profile because these have never been transplanted or anything, so their roots have been able to continuously seek out nutrients, meaning that it's probably a massive root system. So when we cut that back, it's going to loosen the soil for us. And of course, we'll have all the upper part to use as mulch. Here's the upper pond. Of course, we put those irises in at different water levels to see how they could take water, and it's a really healthy looking place. More lettuce and tomatoes growing underneath the pine trees on some of those little hugel mounds. The garlic is leaning over, doesn't really like this too much, but I'm surprised at the growth of the tomatoes. Look at this tomato. There's a couple of tomato plants in here, but these were volunteers, and they've got pretty much full shade, and this is how big they get to grow. And they're still healthy. Here's the other end of that berm. Lots of grass growing in here, trying to take over from where I transplanted white clover. Grass just is annoying. I think it's a really annoying plant, unless you've got something grazing on it or recreation. Kind of beat that dead horse a few times. Here's a blueberry mound, one of the blueberry mounds. A lot of activity going on in here with tomatoes and tobacco, dandelions, comfrey, black-eyed Susan, garlic, which is on its way out. There's lemon balm. All sorts of things going on in that mound. Looking out from that mound into the rest of the garden, there's a really thick understory beginning to develop. This looks like succession is definitely happening here. Here's some of those tomatoes that were all volunteers. Unfortunately, I didn't get to eat any of these. I could have eaten them. You can eat green tomatoes, but I didn't get to have any ripe tomatoes before I left. Onions and lettuce seeding. And when lettuce seeds, it flowers very shortly. Lettuce doesn't stay open for a long time. It gets pollinated and then it gets to going to seed production almost immediately. And it'll produce dandelion-like seeds where they have little tufts of parachutes that blow them around your garden. So if you put these on the windward side of your garden and you allow them to flower, the idea is that when a strong wind comes by, it's going to blow these seeds to the rest of your garden, and you'll have a greater spread. Another one of the blueberry mounds that's got black-eyed Susans, comfrey, tomatoes, garlic, you name it, it's in this little mound, and they're all cohabitating pretty well. We have to cut the comfrey a little bit more often so it doesn't smother the blueberries or anything, but the comfrey can take it even though it's in its first year. Taking a few leaves off of it won't do much damage, and of course it's a tiny bit of fertilizer for the blueberries. And that's just the larger pond. Getting that vegetation in there for cleaner water. That's the idea. We got to get it some organic matter so we can have cleaner water. Very good growth in this southern facing berm, which was our main focus. A crazy looking tomato. This more than likely is on that area that we had terraced. I showed you that in May that we had done. The chickweed was growing. Lots of tomatoes growing in there this year. Raspberries that we thought we had completely transplanted, but obviously not. We've got to keep moving these out because they'll just overtake everything. But if we keep putting them behind the fence, we can let them thrive back there. That's fine. Sunflowers. Let me check our time. We're at 22 minutes. That's good. That's good. We don't have too many pictures left. Probably less than 30 minutes. The 15th, we've got tobacco that is seeding. I thought the form of their flowers was really interesting. And Japanese beetles on some of our plants that we haven't transplanted yet. These must be the Amorpha fruticosas. They've got to be. And the last day, this is the day before I flew out of the country, black-eyed Susans, the roses, the strawberries, saying goodbye to the frog. He's not the only frog anymore. This is in the larger pond. And if we go, before we get to the other pond, we've got these kind of dragonflies are really enjoying our garden. Of course, we really like having dragonflies too. So increasing the marginal plant is going to creating habitat for the nymphs. It's going to create the place where these dragonflies and damselflies can lay their eggs. So that's why we have to leave things growing or sticking up in the water so that we meet that habitat requirement. So the more we get, the better. I couldn't believe how many of these brassicas decided that their little seeds thought that it was a good time to emerge in our garden in the middle of summer. Hopefully some of them survive. If they don't, I'm sure there's still seed down there that is a little bit smarter, engaging temperatures. More the Echinacea. Great blue lobelias one more time with honeybees coming onto them. And we've got dragonflies in the bottom left. Dead center you have goldfish, and a little bit top right from them is another frog who's taken up residence in the smaller pond. So we've got year-round amphibian housing. Dead center you can see that one of these seed pods is almost finished developing, and you can see that these little tufts of little hair-like things are going to be the parachute. So you can imagine all of these seeds ripening and blowing off into the wind to give us some more lettuce plants. Blackberries that need to be transplanted as well. as soon as the temperatures drop down a little bit. This is the first blueberry bush that we planted that I showed you way back November 2010, and it hasn't grown that well. But now that we're allowing things to grow up around it, we've got some nitrogen fixers there, the red clover. Look how green and glossy those leaves are. That's a wonderful sign to see that it's recovering. And down the sheet mulched bed, sunflower dominating everything else. I can't believe how fast that's growing versus everything else. But the squash and everything grew really well. We moved one of the bird feeders, even though we obviously aren't feeding them anymore, but come fall we'll put some seed in there and they're going to start moving their fertilizer someplace else in the garden. Second to last picture, old green gild. And the last one of the same. You can see a lot of these bugs that are on the brassicas. There were a whole lot of them. They were all over the place, but the brassicas didn't seem to mind. They still went to seed. They still produced a whole lot of leaves. And of course, you have to allow the herbivores, otherwise you won't have the carnivores. Or I guess they really should be more like an omnivore, considering they do eat nectar from flowers as well. But that's the last picture from June. Not sure when I'll be able to get around to doing July, possibly this week, we'll see. But hopefully you enjoyed it, and look forward to periodic small updates when I get pictures from the family. And next year, hopefully early summer, my wife and I will get to go back to the States and visit, and I'll do a full photo shoot of the garden as well as some video walkthroughs. I want to start using the video capability of my camera once I get a tripod. So hopefully y'all can wait that long. We'll see what happens in the third year in a victory garden. Thanks for watching all these slideshows. Bye.